Hello listeners, Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator, bringing you this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? A series of interviews designed for people just starting out, in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there and done that, so that they might be inspired to try some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing that they're not alone, that everybody starts somewhere, and everybody goes through times of feeling stuck or being in transition. Welcome to episode 68. Normally, I would be doing this recap at episode 70 and looking back at the last 9, but I had a little bit of a gap in my interview schedule, and so I thought instead of skipping a week, I would go ahead and do the recap a bit early this time and then add the other 2 interviews onto the next one when I do episode 80. I love doing these recap videos because I get to go back and look at the last 7, or in some cases 9 interviews, and look at all of the aha moments, the lessons learned, all of these amazing stories, pull out the nuggets and give those to you in a summary, as well as then kind of throw out a little bit of tips and techniques and some insight from myself and from my experience that might help you then move forward. So let's get to the stories. Episode 61, Nancy Sullivan. She's the Chief Energy Officer, CEO, of Transition Points, LLC. She's also an author, speaker, facilitator, and executive coach. Her first memory of public speaking is in the 2nd grade, and she loved it. And while she didn't know what her career was going to be, obviously in the 2nd grade, she knew she wanted to be on stage somehow. Right out of college, she's selected for a leadership program at Mountain Bell, nicknamed the Jet Jockey Program. And it's designed to airdrop new leaders into roles every 6 months without any training, to see who survives and who can think on their feet, and whether they are likable and can get along with people. Out of 24 of these jet jockeys, Nancy is one of 3 that thrives in this environment. So not just survives it, but thrives in this environment. And through the experience, she learns to trust people to teach her, and she trusts people to learn how to get things done through people. Nancy is not a planner or a worrier. That was a fun thing to learn about her. She trusts her inner knowing and her guidance within. She's high on risk-taking. She says she doesn't have a risk inhibitor, so she's really high on risk-taking. And she approaches life and new opportunities by asking, what good can come out of this? This is going to be awesome. I shared that I'm a worrier, which can sometimes lead to second-guessing, hesitations, and many times being in inaction. And but I've been working on overcoming this, and appreciate that she shared her approach, because it's not enough for someone like me to just know that she's not a worrier and everything's worked out. I'm like, well, how? And how does that work? And my mind goes to so many different places. But anyway, it's just so great to know that that's been her mindset. So that's who she's being. And and it comes through. So looking at life through her lens or through this lens of what good can come of this, and this is going to be awesome, already sets a mindset of curiosity, energy, and positive intention, which is different than doubt and indecision and hesitation. Episode 62, Michelle McGlade, CEO and founder of Evolutionize Media, a journey of success in whatever field she enters, but also one that comes with physical distress to her health. After receiving a serious health diagnosis that she can't ignore, she recognized there's a pattern in her career that takes her to the brink, health-wise, over and over. So she dives into the sources that are bringing her success and those that are hindering her well-being, and then she takes action to break these patterns. As she enters new seasons of her life, she's rethinking her definition of success and focusing on cultivating herself from the inside out. I like that, from the inside out. Her words of wisdom. My goal is to show up as the human being that I want to be so that I can be a powerful force to lead others. When you can stop looking outside of you and listen to that voice inside of you, then that's the voice that wants to be amplified. And I want to role model that. It's funny that Michelle mentions that voice within, as it is another element that Nancy Sullivan had mentioned, trusting her inner guidance. Some people call it a voice, others call it an inner knowing, intuition, trusting their gut, etc. Some great insight that we can pull from Michelle's interview is, how good are you at trusting that inner voice? Is it cheering you on, or is it your biggest critic? Episode 63, Donna DeToe, Mindset and Success Coach. She's a crackpot problem solver and uses her creativity to think outside the box and to successfully navigate the leadership roles she's had in both corporate and nonprofit organization. That is until she finds that she's really at home being an entrepreneur. Starting and running her own catering and renovation businesses was amazing for Donna, and where she discovers her entrepreneurial spirit. But that experience was nothing compared to the passion she's feeling right now after 10 years of coaching. She feels like she's leveraging all of her experience, wisdom, and business tools to help her clients. And she helps them design their future self, live into that self, and then get results. Her words of wisdom: take the risks, make mistakes. She calls it imperfect action. Just act. Take imperfect action and clean it up along the way. So in a way, that's very much like what Nancy Sullivan was saying, right? About what can I learn from this? Just jumping in enthusiastically. But I really love this, just act, take imperfect action, because if we wait for circumstances or situations to be perfect, we're never going to take action, right? And I found that indecision is probably the most uncomfortable place to be, and that being in action is the most powerful and energizing place to be. So why not be in imperfect action? If you struggle with decision making, or maybe you're just struggling with the decision right now, a technique that I've used for making decisions is to actually, contemplate, do your pros and cons, do whatever process you normally would do, but set a deadline for yourself and then make a decision on that day. Then sleep on it. And if you can't sleep and the next morning you're waking up and you're feeling very uncomfortable about your decision, then I think that gives you some insight into the decision that you've made. But if you sleep great, you wake up the next morning and you're really excited about it, then again, that gives you insight. So it's really about making the decision, starting to live with it, maybe even telling others about it, but the sleeping on it and giving yourself a little bit of time to process subconsciously then really speaks to the power of the choice that you've made, and is that the right choice for you at that time. Some people have done this with flipping a coin and then reacting to how the answer came out. If it was heads, I was going to do one thing, tails, I was going to do another. So if you get tails and you're like, I was hoping not to get that, I really wanted heads, then that's another indicator. But what I found with the heads tails things is it's not as definite enough, and you're not really living into it. So sometimes it's not, I don't react in the same way I would as making the decision, sleeping on it, and seeing how the sleep went and how the next day went. So little food for thought. Episode 64, Susie Wargen, which many of you might know. She's a realtor, DJ, and sideline reporter. And hers is a journey that starts with landing her radio dream job. And then she continues to take risks and saying yes to new opportunities, which leads her into a television dream job, until one day the demands of all of these dream jobs become a bit too much. After 2 successful decades in radio and television, Susie decides to follow her mom's advice and pursue a career in real estate. I know that sounds like 2 very different careers, and you'll have to listen to the interview to find out what the pivotal event was that triggered her to make such a transition. What served Susie best through her career is networking. Her words of wisdom: be kind and be good to people. Be aware of who is around you. Everybody can be an opportunity to something. You just don't know what it is. Networking, a very important factor in any career, in any industry. How comfortable are you with networking? How often are you touching base within your network? Is your network more within your internal organization, or is it a good balance of internal and external? It's funny how sometimes we don't think about our network until we need our network, and then we feel very awkward reaching out to our network because it feels kind of cheesy when you reach out when you just need something. So it's important to be touching base with your network. So a couple of networking tips that I like to use. If someone pops into your head, and people do just randomly, right? Reach out to them. Just say, hey, I was thinking about you. And you could reference the last time you spoke. Maybe you saw them on LinkedIn or whatever might have prompted it. But it's just a, hey, I was just thinking about you. And I got to tell you, it feels great when I get those kind of notes from people that I know. So this isn't a weird thing. And you probably have gotten notes from people that have said, hey, I was just thinking about you, or this came up and it reminded me of this time. Those are perfectly normal. That's a great way to touch base and stay in touch with your network. A second tip would be to look for groups outside of your organization. Groups that might be part of your industry. So if you're in technology or cable or financial services or construction or building, you can join those kind of industry groups. Or possibly it's your area of expertise. Maybe your HR, or I guess technology covers a lot of those things, but legal, marketing, leadership, those types of groups. And don't forget just any hobbies that you're interested in. You never know where those relationships are going to lead and how you might get connected to someone super interesting. And as Susie says, everybody can be an opportunity to something. You just don't know what it is. And maybe I would say, and you don't know what it is yet. Episode 65, Russell Kinsill, financial planner and writer. He's the son of a minister growing up in rural Colorado, and his plans for college are more about learning to be a better thinker than preparing for his career. He's drawn to psychology and lands an internship at a mental health facility. And while his career starts to advance, he's very surprised when his boss invites him to not only leave his current job, but to exit the mental health field altogether. He had terminal burnout, but he couldn't see it, but everyone else could. So, determined to make a better career choice this time around, he finds a career coach who helps him assess his gifts and to identify a career where his uniqueness would really thrive. And that ended up being financial planning. So you fast forward to today, where he now owns his own financial planning business, and he sees his work as teaching, educating, and strategic planning. At age 65, he's retired from the things that annoy him. I love that. And spends time on the things that he loves, helping people be more effective and productive at what they do. His strategic plan is to keep working and contributing for another 20 years. His words of wisdom that have served him well: once you decide to do something, you can't quit until you are successful at it. So basically, you have to stick it out, you have to persevere. And he says he wouldn't be where he is today if he didn't stick out his initial few years stepping into what started in the insurance business and then led into the financial planning. A thought-provoking lesson here is that while Russell was super interested in psychology and learning all about it, a direct career in it was not a fit for him. And so you may not need to make what you're mostly interested in be your way of earning a living. So I really think that's important, because sometimes we get so excited about, oh, well, if you do what you love, you will never work a day in your life. But you really have to find that is what you love and how maybe you're earning a living, are they compatible? There can be so many different ways of finding what your interests are and then a career around it. So you can see the difference here. So I would bet that Russell uses his knowledge of psychology every day because he's working with people every day, but he's not in the mental health space. But he's still using that psychology learning that he went through and that he's so drawn to. So maybe it's more meaningful to figure out what types of activities come easy to you, which basically are your strengths and your gifts, and then figure out which occupations need those types of activities. That might be a better way of finding your dream job. Episode 66, Georgia David, Community Engagement Manager for an international NGO, Water for People. A journey that starts by following her interests in sports and marketing, landing internships then and paid roles in high-profile sports organizations, and giving her great exposure to for-profit and nonprofit organizations. Her next career choices become very purposeful when a pivotal event causes her to reevaluate her priorities. Recognizing that life can change very quickly, she and her husband decide that their timeline for the future should be now and not someday. With only 8 years in the workforce, she's already in her third dream job. That's pretty amazing. I don't even know that I could tell you that I ever had my dream job because I really never defined what my dream job was, but I had a lot of great jobs and a lot of great assignments. But anyway, it's really great to hear people talk about having their dream job. Anyway, with only 8 years in the workforce, she's already in her third dream job because of her clarity around pursuing roles and organizations that align with her values and strengths. 3 themes that have served her well: empathy, assuming positive intent, and giving grace. Wow, and she's so young. Her words of wisdom: everyone has their limitations, including myself. It's important to give others and myself permission to make mistakes. It's a freeing way to live. Absolutely. I love this term that she mentions in her theme about assuming positive intent. And it's something that I've been doing for most of my career, but I didn't really have those same words. I really saw it more as the value of building relationships, that when you have relationships, strong connections with people, and you know people, if and when, I should just say, when things go sideways, you give that person the benefit of the doubt, and you choose to talk with them about what may have happened before jumping to conclusions, because it doesn't sound like them when you start jumping to conclusions. So you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. So what a great culture to establish in your organization or with your team so that people don't jump to conclusions. You know, assuming positive intent automatically puts me in a positive mindset. It's not a judging mindset. And it leads us to seeking to understand before making assumptions. Episode 67, Tamara Alexander Johnson, Commercial Corporate Real Estate Leader. Hers is a journey from a rural ranching community to the bustling streets of downtown Denver. After a start in banking at a downtown location, she discovers she loves downtown, but not banking. She loves all the buildings and the commercial landscape, which prompts her to pursue a commercial real estate broker's license. Being a natural connector and risk taker, her persistence pays off after 8 calls to the owner of several local buildings, landing her a job, a mentor, and launching her career. She survived 3 major real estate recessions and continues to still stay positive about the innovation and redevelopment of the commercial real estate industry. What has served her best through her career: finishing her education, continuing her education, and connecting with people and staying positive. Thought I'd end on a positive note, highlighting a couple tips on how I stay positive. First off, I don't really watch the news. I get a few updates on the radio show from when I'm getting ready in the morning, and then I also use an app called The Skim that does just highlights or headlines with a little bit of a blurb and an explanation. But I really only look at that every other day or so, or maybe once or twice a week. What I find is that the news is always geared on sensationalism, fear, and it's triggering that. And so if you keep staying in that space, then all you're seeing is the negative things happening in the world. And sure, I know they have some features that are positive and highlighting the good that is going on, but those are so few and far between that you can't even hardly switch your mindset after hearing, 29 minutes of, the world is going crazy to, oh, and here's a positive story. So anyway, that's my advice. Stop watching the news. You can get your updates, by the way, in little pieces here and there, but you don't have to be overwhelmed 24 hours a day with it. Another tip I use is a gratitude journal. At the end of each day, I write what I am grateful for. And every day I try to make it unique to that day, so who I interacted with. And even if, not all my interactions are positive, many times I'm still grateful for the interaction because it maybe reminded me of who I don't want to be. It reminded me of not overreacting, or it reminds me of something else. So I'm grateful for the experience of it or the lesson of it many times. I also, talk about, or I journal about, I'm grateful for the organizations I'm part of, the people in my life, friends and family, etc. So basically, if you look for the positive, you're going to find it. If you look for the negative, you're going to find it. So look for the positive, my friends. On that note, I'll wrap up. I love looking back on these interviews and the amazing folks who are sharing their stories. And I hope you enjoy this look back as much as I did. Maybe you've listened to all 7 of these interviews and you're reminded now of some of their nuggets, or maybe now you're inspired to go listen to all 7 of them. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the interviews themselves as well as the recap. They're all amazing and interesting stories. And as you know, my goal is to give people starting out in their careers, in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, access to the stories and lessons learned from those that have been there already. And hopefully give them the opportunity to learn and grow from the insight, wisdom, and experience and stories of others. Sometimes it's easier to see yourself in a story than it is to accept advice, because advice can feel like it's being thrown at you. So I really think the story sharing is a big part of learning and growing. If you like this podcast, please subscribe below. And if you have any questions or comments, you can post those on my website, lifestorycurator.com, which is where I also post all of these interviews along with a slideshow of rotating pictures, so you get to see the human side of each of the interviewees, which I have found to be very cool. I know each of them, so I already know what they look like, but it's really fun. I think that if you've heard the voice, to then put a face with the name, or maybe you want to just start watching through the website versus on a podcast, really up to you, whichever your listening and viewing preference is. So either way, again, that's lifestorycurator.com. Would love to hear from you. And on that note, I just want to wish you well, stay safe, and let the storytelling begin.